Halloween is right around the corner, so why don't I make a video about one of the most famous monsters in history besides your mother, the scary common skeleton. Skeletons have a history from a humble beginning of being inside of us to eventually being what's left of us on the battlefield and sometimes wanting to kill us. Animated human skeletons have been used as a symbol of death in the Western culture since the Middle Ages, a symbol perhaps influenced by the Valley of the Dry Bones in the Book of Ezekiel. The Grim Reaper is often depicted as a hooded skeleton holding a scythe. Death as one of the biblical horsemen of the apocalypse had been depicted as a skeleton riding a horse. In some mythologies, the character known as the Grim Reaper, also known as Death, is often depicted coming to collect people's souls. In Celtic mythology, the figure of Ankou is associated with death, tall and wearing a long dark coat and a wide-brimmed hat, and carrying a scythe over his shoulder. The skeleton Ankou is a collector of souls of the dead. What happens if someone reads you your future and turns out to be the famous skeleton card of death? The death card shows the message of death, a skeleton dressed in black armor riding a white horse. The skeleton represents the part of the body that which survives long after life has left it. The armor symbolizes the invincibility and that death will come no matter what, which Minecraft would shamefully steal the idea of a skeleton riding a horse 4 centuries later, and yes, I did steal this joke from a furry. One of the most famous depictions of medieval skeletons, coming from the Danse Macabre, also called the Dance of Death, is an artistic genre of allegory from the late Middle Ages. On the universality of death, the earliest example of the dance in graphic art was on an ancient mural on the walls of a holy church in Paris in 1424. We all know the lovely history of skeletons and pirates working together. Now, did you know famous things for pirates to have on their flag were skeletons and bones, sometimes even whole skeletons. All the meanings of death and sometimes even arming to cause fear. They also often use images of swords, daggers, and other weapons to show that they were ready to fight. Two of the most famous examples of skeleton flags is the skeleton piercing a heart, as well as the skeleton and crossbones, or the skeleton and 2 swords. Other cultures have famous depictions of skeletons, such as the Day of the Dead, the holiday which involves family and friends gathering to pay respects to remember their friends and family members who have died. The Mexican culture honors their ancestors on the Day of the Dead by also reminding themselves that death is just another part of life, and hanging out with skeletons remind them that one day that they will become skeletons. Let's not forget the famous artwork from Japan, the giant skeleton. The Gashadokuro is a spirit that takes the form of a giant skeleton made up of the skulls of people who have died on the battlefield or of starvation and famine, the skeletons which wander the countryside in the darkest hours of the night. Their teeth clatter and their bones rattle, but they don't always make noise. If they should happen upon a human late on the roads, the Gashadokuro will simply creep up and catch their victims, crushing them in their hands or biting their head off. A lot of people remember the Starry Night as well as the sunflower painting by Vincent van Gogh. But did you know the skull of a skeleton with a burning cigarette is an early work by Vincent van Gogh? It is most likely painted in the winter of 1885 or 1886. Some people consider it a reminder of death and mortality, inspired by his father's passing or Vincent van Gogh's own poor health at the time. It could be a criticism of smoking, though Vincent van Gogh did love tobacco and smoked until he died. Another story to the painting is believed it was a juvenile joke while he was studying at the art academy. Chetan Pati is the protector of graveyards, also known as Lord of the Cemetery or Lord of the Crematorium. In Tibetan Buddhism and Vajra Buddhism of the Himalayas, it is a form of 2 skeleton deities, one male and the other female, both dancing wildly with their limbs entwined inside of a halo of flames representing change. In Chinese culture, the Baiju Jing is a demon from the 16th century novel Journey to the West. Her name translates into English as the White-Boned Spirit. She is a shape-shifting demoness, and her true form is depicted as a skeleton. What's the best place to find bones besides your local graveyard? Well, the catacombs of Paris or Rome. These two places put the predator's skull collection to shame. The catacombs began to take place in the 2nd century and were not finished until the 5th century. Here, pagan citizens, Jews, and the first Christians of Rome were buried. You could take a lovely visit to the skull rack, which was a type of wooden rack depicted in several Mesoamerican civilizations, which was the use of a public display of human skulls, typically the use of war captures or sacrificial victims. Or the Tower of Skulls in Mexico City, which uncovered a section featuring 119 human skulls. Don't forget the Crystal Skull, no, not the terrible movie.
You don't want to be like this. This is disgusting. This is awful in every way.
They were human skulls, head-shaped carvings made of clear or milky white quartz. That's not the only skull tower. There was one in Serbia which was crafted by the Ottoman Empire following the Battle of Sagar on May 1809. During the first Serbian uprising, the tower was made from the skulls of the fallen rebels. If you're feeling thirsty, why don't you have a lovely refreshing drink from the skull cup? The use of a human skull as a drinking cup in ritual use or as a trophy is reported in numerous sources throughout history, most often associated with the history of nomadic cultures of the Eurasian steppe. You can always have a lovely swim in the Lake of Skeletons, which is found in India. The skeletons are visible in the clear water of the shallow lake during the month when the ice melts. If you're feeling really daring, you could put some of that skull ice in your skull cup and make a skeleton key cocktail. In medieval times, if you don't subscribe, they would lock you in a prison and wait until you rot away and become a skeleton. If you don't want to end up like poor Mr. Bones over here, I would recommend subscribing. Skeletons are everywhere, especially in my closet. There's so many different types of skeletons. We got skeleton riders, metal skeletons, pirate skeletons, skeletons on wheels, and so much more. Skeletons wanting to kill us have been popularized by many things, like films such as Jason and the Argonauts, Army of Darkness, Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl, and Skeletor from He-Man. The first depiction of skeletons being in film was The Skeleton Dance in 1929. It was a silly animated short project with a comedy horror theme. It was produced and produced by Walt Disney and animated by Ub-By Works. As a child, my first look into skeletons came from the movie Clutch Powers.
Isn't that Uncle Morty? Hey, Morty!
What you say?
Which evolved into Lego sets of skeletons, which usually was Ninjago based. Beyond that, leading to films such as Corpse Bride and Nightmare Before Christmas. Becoming a teen, it was Predator 2. He collects skulls, so it counts. Moving on to a side topic, because I'm addicted to Lego, the Lego skeleton minifigure with a standard skull design first appeared in 1995 in the set 6036, The Skeleton Surprise. The minifigure has appeared in 41 sets across 15 themes, Castle being the first theme it appeared in. It's a difficult question to figure out what was the first skeleton enemy in video games. It may be possible that the dungeon from 1975, which was one of the earliest role-playing games running on the PDP-10 mainframe computers manufactured by Digital, could have been the first depiction of skeletons in video games, but we have no idea. Instead, let's talk about some famous skeletons in video games. We have Castlevania skeletons, Kingsfield, and Dark Souls, which made a lot of people love and hate the enemy skeletons, Ocarina of Time skeletons, Medieval being the first depiction that I know of that allows you to play as a skeleton. We got Minecraft skeletons, Ghost and Goblins, and Skeletron in Terraria. And let's not forget the funny skeletons in Undertale. There are so many examples of skeletons in video games. Enemy skeletons are everywhere and are never going to disappear anytime soon. We connect to the idea of skeleton enemies more than any other mythical creature that we can think of. To put it simply, skeletons are a part of us when we're gone, for better and for worse. Just remember, when you're out on Halloween or maybe playing a video game or watching a movie, give some respect to the common skeleton, unlike Jimmy over here. I hope you enjoyed the weird history of skeletons. I probably did miss a lot of information, and interesting facts because there's so much out there. Please tell me if you have a favorite known skeleton interest or fun fact in the comments below. Besides that, I hope you have a happy Halloween, and don't forget the main goal is to get diabetes. With that, I'll see you next time.